I was standing in the checkout line of a grocery store with just enough money to buy rice, eggs, and a carton of milk. The woman ahead of me had a cart overflowing with organic food and flowers. She was laughing on the phone, talking about dinner plans. Meanwhile, I was doing math in my head, praying my debit card wouldn't decline. And for the first time, I heard this quiet, uninvited voice inside whispering, "This isn't who you're meant to be." I don't tell you this for pity. I tell you because we've all had moments where we feel powerless over our thoughts, over what we say, and especially over what we have in our bank accounts. And I've learned, painfully and beautifully, that these three things, your mind, your mouth, and your money, are not just tools, they're your compass. If this message speaks to you, take a moment, like, subscribe, share it forward, or drop a comment. Your voice matters, and your presence here helps create a braver, more connected space for us all. Your mind, it's the place you wake up in every morning and fall asleep in every night. It's the home you live in that no one else can see. And for a lot of us, it hasn't always felt safe there. Maybe it's noisy with self-doubt or heavy with old stories. Maybe it's full of voices that aren't even yours, voices from childhood, from heartbreak, from failure. I want you to know this. If your mind feels like a battlefield, you're not broken. You're human, and it's okay to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. There was a season in my life when I couldn't stop spiraling. One small setback and my thoughts would twist into a storm. If I didn't get a reply to a message, I'd assume I was being ignored. If something didn't go perfectly, I'd assume I wasn't enough. And the scariest part, I thought that was normal. I didn't even realize I had the power to change it. I thought my thoughts were facts. But they're not. They're just habits, and habits can be healed. Controlling your mind doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It doesn't mean ignoring pain. It means becoming so lovingly aware of what you think that you stop letting every fear and every lie drive the car. It means becoming the compassionate observer of your own inner dialogue. It means learning to ask, is this thought kind? Is this thought helpful? Is this thought even mine? And you have to be gentle with yourself in this process, because healing the mind is not like flipping a switch. It's more like learning a language you were never taught, but somehow expected to speak fluently. And some days you'll fall back into old thought patterns. You'll believe the lie that says you're behind or unworthy or unlovable. That's okay. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is awareness, because with awareness comes choice. You can choose to pause. You can choose to breathe. You can choose to rewrite the story. Instead of, I'm not good enough, you say, I'm doing the best I can, and that matters. Instead of, nothing ever works out for me, you say, this is hard, but I am not powerless. Instead of, they must think I'm a failure, you say, their opinion doesn't define my truth. This is what emotional freedom looks like. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of clarity. You become someone who doesn't panic at every negative thought, but instead asks with curiosity, where is this coming from? What is this trying to protect me from? And how can I move through it instead of running from it? The truth is, your mind can become either a sanctuary or a prison, and the difference depends on how gently you learn to hold it. No one else can do this work for you. But once you start, once you truly begin to tend to your thoughts, the way a gardener tends to fragile new roots, everything begins to shift. Not all at once, but quietly, steadily, from the inside out. Because when you learn to control your mind, not with force, but with love, the world outside of you starts to reflect that peace. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to rest instead of overthink. You begin to rise, not because your life is easy, but because your mind is steady. Words are small things with enormous weight. They hang in the air long after they've been spoken. They land in hearts and echo in memories. And whether we realize it or not, we're all either healing or harming with the way we speak. To others, yes, but even more powerfully, to ourselves. There was a moment I'll never forget, not because it was loud, but because it was quiet. I was sitting at the dinner table with someone I loved, and I let frustration speak before I let compassion breathe. I said something sharp, unnecessary. I watched the light in their face dim in real time. That's the moment it hit me. You don't have to raise your voice to break someone's spirit. Sometimes all it takes is a careless sentence. That's the thing about our mouths. They're mirrors for what's happening in our minds. If your thoughts are cluttered with fear, shame, or unhealed pain, your words will reflect that. Maybe not in volume, but in tone, in sarcasm, in subtle digs, in the way we interrupt or blame or shut down. We think we're just telling it like it is, but often we're just bleeding on people who didn't cut us. So let's talk about what it means to truly control your mouth. Not in a way that silences your truth, but in a way that honors it. First, it starts with noticing the sighs, the complaints, the constant need to explain, defend, or win. All of that is noise that points to something deeper. Usually a fear of not being heard, not being respected, or not being safe. And when you notice that, you get to choose something different. You get to pause, to breathe, to reframe. Because controlling your mouth isn't about being silent, it's about being intentional. It's about speaking words that reflect the kind of person you're becoming, not the kind of pain you're still carrying. I want you to think about the words you've been saying about yourself lately. Are you calling yourself lazy, stupid, a failure, behind? Would you ever say those things to someone you love? No? Then you don't get to say them to yourself either. The truth is, your voice is your wand. Every sentence you speak is a spell you cast into your life. Are you casting spells of healing, or are you cursing yourself every time you talk? We live in a world that rewards fast talkers, loud opinions, quick clapbacks, but real power is in restraint. Can you imagine if everyone had the same love for life tools that we do? But we also have to be inspired. This is what real courage is in choosing softness when the moment tempts you to be sharp. And real confidence, it shows up in the silence between your words, in your willingness to listen, to pause, to speak only when your truth is aligned with your values. You can still be honest without being cruel. You can still be passionate without being reckless. You can still be bold without burning bridges you'll wish you had tomorrow. There's a sacred strength in people who think before they speak, not out of fear, but out of integrity. They understand that words are not free. They cost trust. They cost energy. They cost connection. And once they're out there, they don't just disappear. They become part of your legacy. So if your goal is peace, choose words that create it. If your goal is love, speak in a way that holds space for it. And so what needs to happen is that we need to seek to start to be aware of values that create love, that create hope, that create hope, that create hope, that create hope. And the way that I see that, it's not that words should do this. It's that we should. Right? We want to be free. And if your goal is growth, then speak like someone who knows that every sentence is a seed. The right words spoken at the right time can change a life. And sometimes that life is yours. So speak like you're listening to your future self. Because you are. Money is one of the most misunderstood and emotionally charged areas of our lives. It's not just about numbers or bank accounts. It's about safety. It's about identity. It's about worth. And for many of us, our relationship with money is a reflection of how we feel about ourselves when no one's watching. I didn't grow up with a financial education. I didn't learn budgeting at the dinner table or how to invest in my future while still learning how to survive the present. What I learned was that money was either a source of stress or a source of escape. And when you grow up around scarcity, whether real or emotional, it leaves a mark. You begin to associate money with fear, shame, secrecy. You either grip it tightly or you spend it recklessly. Either way, it controls you. The truth is, how you handle money says less about your income and more about your internal world. I used to spend impulsively when I was anxious or insecure, thinking that buying something new could somehow patch up an old wound. I'd convince myself I deserved it after a hard week, or tell myself, just this once. But the feeling of relief never lasted. Because it wasn't about the money. It was about trying to quiet a part of me that felt unworthy or unseen. At the same time, I know people who are so afraid of not having enough that they hoard every cent, turning abundance into anxiety. They check their bank accounts 10 times a day, not to plan, but to soothe fear. Again, not a money issue, a mindset issue. When you learn to control your money, what you're really doing is reclaiming your narrative. You're saying, I refuse to be ruled by my past. I choose to make decisions based on wisdom, not wounds. I choose to make decisions based on wisdom, not wounds. Budgeting isn't a punishment, it's a declaration. It says, I trust myself to plan for my future. Saving doesn't mean you're stingy, it means you have vision. Saying no to that temporary high, that impulsive buy, that status-driven expense, that's not lack. That's leadership. That's you leading yourself. And that kind of discipline, that kind of integrity with your finances, it echoes in every part of your life. You start realizing that your money should be working for you, not the other way around. You stop chasing trends and you start chasing freedom. You stop living paycheck to paycheck emotionally and begin investing in your long-term peace. Let me be clear. Money won't solve your self-worth issues. But the way you treat your money can absolutely reflect your growth. When you believe you are worthy of rest, you stop overworking. When you believe you are worthy of peace, you stop overspending to prove you belong. When you believe you are enough, just as you are, you stop tying your identity to what you wear, where you eat, or what you can afford to show online. That's when money becomes a tool, not a master. So, how do we begin? We begin by looking at our numbers with honesty, not shame. We begin by tracking what we spend, not because we want to be perfect, but because we want to be present. We begin by asking ourselves, is this purchase filling a need or feeding a wound? Every time you take control of your money, no matter how small the step, you're telling yourself, I am worth building a life of stability. I am worth being taken care of. I am worth financial clarity. Even if you grow up with chaos around money, even if you've made mistakes, even if you feel behind, it's not too late to start honoring yourself through the way you manage your resources. Because the goal isn't just wealth, it's wellness. It's not just about making more, it's about living with meaning. And money, when handled with purpose, can help you do exactly that. There's this quiet moment, usually when the house is still, when no one's asking anything of you, where you catch a glimpse of yourself. Not the version you show the world, not the one that's smiling in photos or saying, I'm fine in conversations. I'm talking about the raw, unedited you, the you who knows what hurts, the you who carries the weight of all the things left unsaid, the you who sometimes feels like they're holding it all together with invisible tape. And that version of you, that's who needs your leadership the most. When we talk about controlling your mind, your mouth, and your money, we're not talking about rigid discipline or perfectionism. We're talking about self-leadership. The kind that's rooted in self-respect, not shame. The kind that honors your humanity while still calling you into responsibility. Because let's be honest, nobody's coming to rescue us. No mentor, no paycheck, no partner, no applause. If you're waiting for someone else to fix the chaos in your life, you'll be waiting forever. The real shift happens the moment you say, I may not be where I want to be, but I am no longer willing to abandon myself to stay here. That's the moment your life begins to change. When you stop outsourcing your power. When you stop blaming your past, your parents, the economy, or the algorithm. When you stop treating your life like something that's happening to you and start treating it like something that you are actively shaping, even if that shaping is slow, even if that progress is invisible at first. You start choosing what to feed your mind. And that means sometimes turning off the noise, stepping away from the drama, saying no to conversations that only keep you circling the same pain. You stop letting every notification pull your attention and every opinion pull your self-worth into question. You protect your peace like it's your most sacred possession, because it is. You start watching your mouth, not out of fear, but out of love, because you understand now that words either build or break. And you no longer want to break yourself or others in the name of being real. You want to be intentional, clear, kind, courageous, and you begin to manage your money, not because you suddenly became a financial genius, but because you've decided that chaos is no longer your comfort zone. You don't want to live in survival mode anymore. You want to build. You want to breathe. You want to be proud of the way you show up for yourself, even when no one's clapping. And let's be real. This kind of self-leadership can be lonely sometimes, not because you're alone, but because you're walking away from patterns, habits, and sometimes people that were once familiar. You may feel misunderstood. You may question if you're doing it right. But I promise you, when you lead yourself with integrity, with compassion, with discipline, life eventually begins to align around that clarity. Because people may not always notice what you're doing to heal, to grow, to change, but you will feel it in how you sleep at night, in how you speak to yourself in the mirror, in how you stop shrinking or over-explaining or chasing love you have to earn. You begin to trust yourself again. And that's one of the most sacred and powerful things in this world. So if you're in that messy middle where you're doing the work, but the results haven't fully shown up yet, don't quit. Don't numb it. Don't run. Stay. Stay with the discomfort. Stay with the slow growth. Stay with the awkward beginnings, because you're not just building habits, you're building a home within yourself. One that doesn't collapse every time life gets hard. One that doesn't rely on applause to feel worthy. One that stands steady and rooted because it was built on truth. There comes a moment in every healing journey where you look around and realize this isn't just about fixing broken pieces anymore. This is about building something new. This is about creating a life that feels like yours. Not the version you thought you should live, not the one others expect, but a life that's shaped by your values, your truth, your peace. When you learn to control your mind, your mouth, and your money, not with force, but with compassion, you start to feel different, not perfect, not fearless, but anchored, rooted. You begin to experience a quiet kind of confidence that doesn't need to prove anything because it knows who it is. You stop walking into rooms hoping to be chosen. You start walking in already knowing your worth. You stop saying things just to be liked. You start speaking in a way that respects both yourself and others. You stop spending to impress. You start investing time, energy, money into what nourishes your future, not just numbs your pain. That's what this is really about. Freedom. Not the flashy kind, not the kind that needs a stage, but the kind that lets you sleep well at night. The kind that lets you look in the mirror and say, I like the way I'm showing up. That's power, and that power lives inside of you. Not out there in the world, but in the small choices you make every single day. The choice to take a deep breath instead of reacting. The choice to listen instead of defend. The choice to pause before spending, to pray before panicking, to respond with love when it would be easier to lash out. We're so quick to chase big, dramatic transformation. But real success, lasting, sustainable, soul-deep success is quiet. It happens in the way you treat the cashier, in how you speak to your child when you're tired, in how you hold your own heart when you fail. It's in the 1,000 invisible decisions that no one applauds, but that define who you are when no one's watching. I want you to know something. If you've come this far, you are already doing more than you think. If you're showing up, If you're trying to heal your thoughts, refine your words, take control of your finances, and stay kind in a world that can be so harsh, you are walking the rare path. And I'm proud of you. Because this kind of growth isn't glamorous. It's gritty. It requires you to feel the things you once ran from, to break the cycles that once gave you a false sense of comfort, to forgive people who may never say sorry, to forgive yourself for all the times you didn't know better. But it's worth it. Every step, every stumble, every uncomfortable moment of choosing growth over ego, truth over image, wisdom over impulse. So let this be a reminder, you're not behind, you're not failing, you're becoming. And becoming isn't always loud. It's quiet, it's sacred, it's real. You are allowed to take up space in your own life. You are allowed to rest, to restart, to reset the rules that no longer serve you. And you are more than capable of leading yourself gently, boldly, consistently into the life that aligns with who you truly are. The world doesn't need a more polished version of you. It needs a more present version of you. The you who speaks with intention, who spends with purpose, who thinks with clarity, who leads with empathy, who lives with truth. So let this be your new beginning right here, right now. You don't need permission. You don't need a grand plan. You just need the willingness to choose yourself with every breath, every word, every dollar, every day. Because when you control your mind, your mouth, and your money, you don't just change your habits, you rewrite your future. So maybe today, you take one step. Just one. Maybe you catch one negative thought and replace it. Maybe you pause before reacting. Maybe you sit down and create a simple money plan that reflects your dreams, not your fears. Success isn't a finish line. It's a rhythm, a return, a choice we make daily to rise higher without losing ourselves. Control your mind, control your mouth, control your money. Not because the world demands it, but because your soul deserves it. You're not behind, you're building.